aperture's red. Sailor's going into the red. Air's pretty rough. Bang it around hard. Do you have me in sight? Repeat, do you have me in sight?
This man is set on flying faster than anyone has ever flown a propeller airplane. He tears through the sky at the breaking point for pilot and plane, reaching for the high ground. He has to topple a legend, a record which no man has been able to break for 30 years. His name is Darryl Greenamyer.
Champion Spark Plugs presents...
In 1932, Jimmy Doolittle set a new world airspeed record by pushing the stubby and highly unstable GB racer up to 294 miles an hour. He was one of the few pilots that flew this plane and lived to tell about it. Three years later, this plane upset Doolittle's record by flashing through the speed traps at 352 miles an hour. It was a radically advanced airplane for its day, almost as unique as the man who built and flew it, Howard Hughes. In 1939, the German Air Force prepared a special racing plane just for the world propeller speed record. The sleek Messerschmitt racer, flown by Fritz Wendel, set an unbelievable mark of 469 miles an hour. For over 30 years, the German speed record has been invincible, a challenge to men who fly and build propeller airplanes. Now, in the jet age, most have conceded the old record to be the final one. But on the hot California desert, a small group of men labor for one more charge at the windmill. Darryl Greenamyer and his crew pour sweat and muscle into rebuilding the engine burned out in last year's futile attempt. If you had to put a label on Darryl Greenamyer, it would be pilot, with a capital P. He eats, sleeps, and dreams flying. Not just any kind of flying, but the fastest, highest, lowest, and most teeth-rattling kind of flying imaginable. At work, he test flies airplanes such as the world's fastest jet aircraft, the Lockheed SR-71. Doing over 2,000 miles an hour, almost too high to see the ground, Greenamyer carries out his engineering test pilot assignment. Greenamyer is a quiet, unassuming guy with strangers, a man of few words with a faraway look in his eyes. Like many pro pilots, he only really opens up with those who know and share the strange fascination of flight. In this small, exclusive world, Darryl stands out as a leader, a doer. In unspoken terms, they rate him the best pilot around, a guy with a natural gift for flying.
I've been flying now for about 15 years. That's how I've made my living right from the start. I've flown all kinds of aircraft, jets, transports, private planes, and ex-military fighters like this Bearcat. It's hard to describe what it is about flying that gets in your blood. You can have freedom, power, speed, and a real sense of physical and mental accomplishment, all in one package if you do it well. Of course, it can get hairy too, but I guess good things don't come easy.
Darryl Greenamyer is 32 years old. A bachelor, he lives alone in a house cluttered with airplane parts, engines, and various mechanical odds and ends. He plays several musical instruments, likes to ski, drive fast automobiles, and has even taken a fling at drag racing. He enjoys pizza and beer, but doesn't smoke. A fairly ordinary guy, except when he climbs into an airplane. This is his personal proving ground, a restless place. Flying at over 3 times the speed of sound would be enough for most any man. But Greenamyer isn't satisfied with flying the fastest jet. He's decided he's going to fly the world's fastest propeller airplane as well. As many have discovered, this is easier said than done, especially under the strict conditions necessary to certify the record. Neither industry nor military are interested in the propeller record today, so Darryl and a handful of friends must do it alone. They work long, hard hours on the machine Darryl hopes to coax up to 500 miles an hour. A lot to ask of an airplane that was at its prime when Greenamyer was only 8 years old. The Navy Bearcat seemed to be all propeller and engine. Built strictly for quarter-horse speed and dogfighting, Grumman's F8F was one of the last propeller-driven fighters made for the U.S. Navy. Succeeding the famous Wildcat and Hellcat fighters, its mission was interception of Japanese suicide aircraft. After retiring from active duty, a small number of Bearcats were auctioned off to persons looking for fast transportation or an unusual conversation piece. One of these planes would eventually find its way to Darryl Greenamyer for a new and highly unusual mission. As an interceptor, the Bearcat excelled. But now, only one thing is important: flat-out speed. This means stripping all non-essentials, then taking the basic airplane and adding, smoothing, and refining every piece and part.
When air racing picked up again, or there was some talk of air racing coming back, I wanted to get an airplane and go up and join the crowd and see what this racing was like. At the time, the easiest airplane for me to get my hands on was a Bearcat. Of course, it was a stock Bearcat sitting in a field, needing a lot of work. Well, I realized that it was going to take a little bit more than a stock airplane to compete with the guys that were running in the unlimited class. So I started into a program of modifying it to see if I couldn't clean it up aerodynamically and make it go faster.
Many major changes had to be made to the nose and engine, propeller, wing roots, wingspan, wing tips, cockpit and canopy, and tail. With these modifications, the Bearcat was ready to race, and so was Greenamyer. Every September, the clear desert sky near Reno, Nevada, is filled with the roar of powerful racing engines. This is the site of the National Championship Air Races. The main event here is the unlimited class race. To enter, an airplane must have a propeller and a piston engine. Other than that, the sky's the limit. This has got to be the biggest, most powerful form of motor racing anywhere. When the pace plane pulls up, the race is on. 125 miles around an 8-mile oval course. The rules are simple. Stay outside the oval and go fast.
It gets a little hectic, especially on the start, because you've got 6 or 7 airplanes line abreast, and you're all coming across the starting line, and that first pylon, everyone's looking at. and they're looking out of the side of their eyes at everyone else, and you're all going to converge on that first pylon, and something's got to give. With the desert going by at 450 miles an hour, 50 feet off the deck, there's not much room for anything but seat of the pants start flying. You have to just become part of the airplane. So much so that you can sense the nearness of the ground below, judge your speed by the roar of the wind and the engine, and feel the tremendous buildup of force on the wings as you bank into a turn. Above all, you have to have total confidence in yourself and the airplane. Drop the ball just once, and the ground will reach right up and bite you.
This was the proving ground for Darryl Greenamyer and his Bearcat. He met the challenge by winning the unlimited championship race every year for the past 4 years. Although strong, the Bearcat's air race performance is still below the 480-mile-an-hour speeds required for the world record. So Darryl and his crew worked without let-up on the last few possible modifications for speed. Finally, with darkness setting in and the record attempt only 18 hours away, the last screw is tightened and the Bearcat pushed out for a test flight. The line leading to the cockpit is very short.
The airplane is kind of marginal. It takes a lot of work to get it in the air. It's not a very nice handling airplane at low speed, and it's not even nice handling at high speed, and I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to stay on top of it, and someday I may end up, having to jump out of it or bellying it in.
On the Bearcat, failure of the smallest part could result in sudden disaster. Right now, the tiny sealed cockpit is the loneliest place in the world for Darryl Greenamyer. The takeoff appears normal, but then something goes wrong.
Mayday aircraft, clear for immediate landing on any available runway. All other aircraft maintain altitude.
With the engine throttled all the way back at a dangerously low altitude, Greenamyer strains every inch of glide from the stubby wings in an effort to reach the runway.
It's a very bad feeling to be sitting up there. You kind of have your heart in your throat, and you expect the engine to seize at any time.
Repairs are rushed through and a second flight made with daylight all but gone. Time runs out before a full test can be made, but the brief flight has revealed something unusual.
The airplane is so highly modified, and of course I did the modifications, and I'm not so sure that the wings are on there straight, for instance. And so when you get going up to high speeds, the airplane flies sideways, and there doesn't seem to be anything to get the thing to go straight down the road. It just does, it just wants to go sideways.
At this point, no one knows what will happen tomorrow when the Bearcat is pushed to its speed limit. But one thing is certain. Greenamyer has locked his sights on the speed record, and he'll fly forward, sideways, or upside down to break it. Edwards Air Force Base on the Mojave Desert in California is one of the few locations in this country where a world speed record attempt can be made. Here they have the required measuring equipment and surveyed speed course. At the southern end of the base, out on Rogers Dry Lake, there's a long black strip with measured markers on it. These markers are exactly 1 kilometer apart. Greenamyer will have to go down this strip, over the markers 2 times in each direction, staying below 300-foot altitude. The record is the average speed for 4 complete passes without landing. He will have to average 477 or better to take the record, and the temperature will be around 110 degrees.
The record is possibly just a few hours away. How are you?
Well, fine. I wish I had a little more sleep last night. But the airplane's looking good. I'm a little disappointed with the wind blowing this hard this early because it may get up quite a bit heavier.
The airplane is given a final cleanup and prepared for flight. Not much more can be done at this stage. A lot depends on the unpredictable desert weather.
We picked the hottest time of the year. Well, the problem with this is you start running around the desert at 100 feet off the ground. There's a lot of turbulence, and the wind blows at 30 knots, very easily, practically every afternoon. So it gets very turbulent, and this really throws you around in the cockpit. And so I took some sponges and rags and taped them to my shoulders, and I jammed up against the airframe of the inside of the cockpit so that it wouldn't jostle me around so much.
With the airplane ready and takeoff only minutes away, calculations are reviewed for the last time. In order to get the required speed, Darryl will have to squeeze close to 3,000 horsepower from the rebuilt engine, what some pilots appropriately call destruction power. In its modified state, and with the use of special fuel additives, the engine should be able to put out this tremendous power, but only for very short bursts.
Well, the year before that I tried to break this record, I blew up an engine. Of course, I think about all kinds of things, like if the engine seizes, it's probably going to yank itself out of the engine mount, and of course this gives you a bad CG problem where the airplane flutters down like a leaf, and you think about all these things, but and the biggest problem is the only incentive to push that and torture that airplane is that little tiny piece of paper that says the speed through the course was such and so. There's no one alongside of you, no one pushing you. It's kind of like you're competing with yourself more than anything. On the fourth pass and the last pass, the oil pressure started fluctuating. I wasn't sure what the problem was, so I just pulled the power off and glided through the course. It's hot. It's so hot I couldn't believe it. I was burning my hand. In fact, I got a blister on my finger from holding onto the control stick. And it's a lot hotter than it was last year. Maybe the stack mod that we did moved the exhaust in closer, and it's hotter than a pistol. We made a stack modification to the exhaust pipes to try and get the flame laying along the fuselage rather than sticking out across the wing. And what it amounted to was it burned all the paint off the side of the airplane, and the cockpit got real hot. There was an exhaust leak coming out of one of the stacks, and the exhaust was coming down the top of the fuselage into the cockpit and right in on my hand. And of course my hand was burning. I couldn't hold on to the stick, and I was changing hands back and forth, and And it was so hot that I thought I must have burnt a hole in the side of the fuselage.
The same pattern of last year's failure seems to be repeating. Minor engine trouble and not quite enough speed on the first try. As Darryl heads for the barrier a second and last time, there's a desperate confidence in the air. If he fails, the cost and effort for a third attempt next year would make it impossible. Those involved understand why the German record has stood so long. On the lake bed, the strong wind is like the breath of a furnace. Protected from the baking heat, the precision timing cameras stand ready to record Greenamyer's last try.
West Darryl, Bearcat 1 in sight.
510 miles an hour, way over 3,000 horsepower. Too much power and the engine could rip itself right off the airplane. .459 miles an hour. Now the wind's against him, but that's not all. Power is dropping and oil temperatures going into the red. The hot engine may start to detonate at any minute. He's got to keep the speed up to come out with a 477 or better average. Greenamyer's fighting to keep the left wing up as the Bearcat tries to bank and go sideways. The wings may flutter and tear off at this tremendous overload.
Camera, Roger.
508 miles an hour. Cylinder and oil temperature both in the red now. The exhaust stacks are running white hot, turning the cockpit into an oven. Greenamyer's flying between the hammers and a hard place. One man sealed into 4 tons of screaming metal. This is where the test pilot comes out. Clear head and steady hand, reflex and instinct. One more pass, just one more time. Starting to smoke and the belly's covered with oil. This is it. Throttle all the way forward. Markers dead ahead. He's got it. 454. Average speed, 483 miles an hour. Right now, Darryl Greenamyer could probably fly the Bearcat straight to the moon with no sweat. Those who knew better said it was practically impossible. One man, a few friends, and a war surplus airplane had no chance of breaking a record of this stature. Darryl Greenamyer thought otherwise, and a few minutes ago, he proved his point the hard way. Like Greenamyer, victory is the only reward these men were after. They've helped to do something they measure as great, and that's what's important. As the fastest propeller airplane in the world, the Bearcat will probably go to a museum. As for Darryl Greenamyer, his eye is on the horizon for the next challenge.